After finally collecting herself, Frieren, along with Fern and Stark, would enter into Francis's cabin. It was a quiet little abode. It had a 2-bedroom, one for where Francis's parents slept, and one for himself, although it was hardly ever used at all, given that he had lived on his own for so many years. He would boil some water and make them some tea. Nothing fancy, just a few leaves that he had managed to scrounge up from the market down at the bottom of the hill. Frieren was trying to keep herself composed, but she wanted answers. What happened? What could have gone wrong? It was happening to her all over again. In the blink of an eye, her life had changed once more. Another major event, and she wasn't there. That burden, the burden that she felt in her heart, the burden that all elves felt. True isolation. Because of a long lifespan, so much could change, and yet what seemed to be an eternity for others was nothing more but a passing moment for them. It felt like it was just yesterday she found those boys. She raised them, trained them, clothed, fed them. They became a part of her, and she said that she'd be back. She couldn't have been gone that long. What could have changed? Francis would tell them everything. My father told me stories about you, Miss Frieren, Francis said. You were the one that trained him and my uncle. Your uncle? Uncle Jack. I guess you hadn't been keeping track of them much. I can fill you in on the details. After you went your separate ways, my father and my uncle, they traveled west until eventually they came to a coastline. It was a village area near the seas. There they met a young woman by the name of Barbara. She was an adventurer as well. They formed a pack. They called themselves the West Coast Trio because that's where they were funded. My father was known as the Hawkeye, his adventurer name. While skilled in many capabilities, he was most famed for using a bow and arrow. That was his style, although he carried a small sword at his side. Uncle Jack was the complete opposite. We called him the swordsman. He carried 2 swords on his back and 2 at either side of his hip. As long as he had a sword, he was unbeatable. And then finally there was my mother. She was a wielder of a battle staff and a mage. They called her Mockingbird. Together they formed a trio, the West Coast Trio. They traveled, went on adventures as a team, even worked with a couple of high-end people. Then before long, my mom and my dad, they fell in love. The Mockingbird and the Hawkeye, Fern said. Yeah, you could say that it was because of me that their adventures came to an end. At least Dad stopped being an adventurer full-time and chose to be more of a stay-at-home father with my mom. They'd go on little side quests here and there, whenever the forest became filled with low-level monsters, or whenever there was some job that wouldn't take them too far. They'd do it and they'd leave me with one of the neighbors for a little while, and then they'd return. That's how it was, at least till I was 6. What happened? Mom contracted a disease. It was a rare one, and there wasn't really a cure for it. She died during the winter time. From then on, it was just me and Dad. I had to step up from then on. I'd help out with hunting, with gardening, things of that nature. He taught me how to use a bow. It was around the time when I was 9 years old that everything changed. Uncle Jack had been gone for 4 years, but he came back, told my dad that there was a mission he wanted to go on. It could be a lucrative opportunity for all of us, but I was too young to go with them. even though I really wanted to. Dad thought that I was old enough to take care of myself. Uncle Jack promised that the mission wouldn't take no more than 2 or 3 months. We had already had food stocked up for a while now, and the garden was doing well, and the first signs of spring were just coming into bloom. Dad figured I could be fine on my own for at least 3 months. He wasn't wrong. And what happened next? Frieren would ask. Well, 2 or 3 months turned into 4 months. 4 months turned into 5 months, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then 9. 9 whole months passed, and I heard nothing from my father. I got really worried. And then he showed up. You won't believe me. Frieren looked at Francis seriously. Tell me what happened. A man, a green man. His skin, it was green, but it was like it was something chiseled out of stone itself. He was like a warrior. He carried a single sword and a body wrapped in a knapsack. He buried the body in the backyard. When I ran out to see what had happened, I saw him. I tried to attack, but he deflected every arrow I shot with his blade. He didn't even take it out of the hilt. I tried to go in for an attack, but he knocked me down. He said nothing to me. He was cloaked. The man in green simply wandered off into the forest. I wanted to chase after him, but I had to see what he left behind. And that's when I realized it was my father. So this man in green, Stark said, he killed your father and brought him back to you? That's the gist of it. What about Jack? Frieren said. Is he okay? Where is he? I don't know. I didn't see anyone else from Uncle Jack's party. If I had to assume, the man in green, the green swordsman, he probably killed Uncle Jack as well. But why would he bring back the body, though? Fern would say. Who knows? Maybe my father lost to him. Maybe my father had a final request to be buried with my mom. Perhaps he was just trying to honor it. Maybe he just didn't want me wondering whether or not my father was ever going to come home. Even if the truth was harsh, at least I'd already know. And what have you been doing since then? Stark would ask. I've lived. I've trained. I've just been waiting for an opportunity. An opportunity to find that bastard and to put an arrow through his head. So you're after revenge. Why haven't you left sooner? This was my father's home. The home where me and my mom and my dad lived together happily. I couldn't just leave it behind. And I knew I wasn't strong enough. I've been training with my magic, using it to enhance my body to get stronger. Dad taught me a little bit, but not a whole lot. He left a couple of books, a couple of diaries, detailing arrow technique, fighting styles. I've been practicing my archery, but I'm obviously not strong enough. Don't sell yourself short, Frieren would say. I've been training Fern from a young age. Her defensive magic is as good as you could have expected it to be. But what would you do now? Isn't it obvious? I'm going to keep practicing. I'm going to keep training, keep getting stronger until I can find him and kill him. It's going to be a lot easier said than done. You have no idea where this swordsman is. You have no idea if he's even still alive. I know he's alive. There's no way he can't be. My father and my uncle were as strong as they come. If he was capable of killing them, I don't even want to imagine what could have taken that bastard out. And what about you all? Why did you come here? I came here looking for your father and your uncle, Frieren would say. I was hoping that they'd be willing to follow us on our journey. Frieren would be explaining where they were going, what they were going to do. That's when Francis had the idea. If I go, could I speak to my father again? I don't believe it would be impossible. But why would you want to know who did it? If I could figure out what happened, then maybe I could... Hold on. Do you even know where your father was going? He said that he was heading towards a place he had heard of in legend. Francis would explain a little bit about the expedition that he knew. And Frieren grimaced. Those boys. How could they do something so foolish, so reckless? You know where they were going? Frieren would recall telling the boys stories. Stories about her adventures with her party. Her adventures. Among them all, during their travels in hopes of defeating the Demon King, he had many lairs, many places with ancient artifacts all hidden away. Knowing that that was where they were trying to go, it made all the more sense. Who knows what they could have ran into? But during my travels, I never came across a green swordsman. So I have no idea who it is. But he must have indeed been strong. I don't doubt in the skills of your father and your uncle. I don't believe that they would have been defeated so easily. Whoever they faced must have been indeed a powerful enemy. If you will, accompany us. Accompany you? Yes. I won't leave his son behind. The choice is yours, of course. I won't force you to come with us if you don't want to, and of course I will, Francis said with absolute confidence. I don't hold any grudge against you. My father explained to me how you elves work. I know that you guys live a lot longer, so your concept of time can be skewed compared to others. I'm not angry that you didn't show up. I'm just grateful that you did eventually. Francis was trying to hold back the tears. I was alone for so long. And I didn't know what I was going to do. Every day I've trained, but I know I've plateaued at some point. I've hit my ceiling and I can't go any farther. So please, Miss Frieren, please accept me as your student. Train me the way you trained my father. Frieren was more than willing to accept him. And for both Fern and Stark, more the merrier. They added someone else to their group. Of course, Francis would take time to pack his things, to make his peace, locking the door of his family home, hoping that this wouldn't be the final time he'd see it. He stopped at the gravestone of his father, allowing for his chance to say his piece. Hey, Pop. Well, you wouldn't believe the craziest thing, but it seems your master's finally returned. I know you always told me about forgiveness and turning the other cheek. And you know, I always believed that I could do that. But maybe I'm just Maybe I'm just not the boy you thought I was. It's probably wrong of me to go seeking revenge. Perhaps the best thing to do would be just to let it go. But I can't do that. I don't know what awaits me on the outside. But I hope that whatever I do, I hope I at least made you proud. I promise I'll come back. So, see you later. Frieren was also given a chance to say her piece, a chance of privacy with the fallen son. Clint, I wish I could have done more for you. I wish I could have been better. I don't know what you went through or what you suffered. But I promise I'm going to make things right. I'm going to find who did this to you. And I'm going to make them pay. Even if I have to spend the rest of my life, if I have to use every ounce of strength within me, I promise you, I won't let your death be in vain. And I won't let any harm come to your son. With that, the four would set off. Their journey starting on a rather somber tone. But as they got to know each other, they realized that perhaps they weren't so different after all. Despite his rather resting bitch face, Francis wasn't as bad as you might have thought. He could be rather articulate and could be rather sweet. It was just that he had the propensity to stay at a distance. He didn't allow himself to get caught up too much in the everyday affairs of others. For so long, he had always had a one-track mind, training both his body and his skills. Although it's hard to level up when you're all on your own. After reading through his father's notes and diaries, scrounging through all the information in archery, at least what his father had available, he practiced day in and day out. He practiced in the blazing heat, in the pouring rain, in the freezing snow, the howling winds. It didn't matter if it was day or night. If he wasn't exercising, sleeping, or tending to his small garden or hunting, he was training. He took every opportunity to train, every time marking a target and trying to hit it from an insane distance. He wanted to be the best of the best, the ultimate sniper. In his belief, if he ever came across the green swordsman, he wanted to be able to quick draw, to shoot his arrow faster than he could pull his blade. If he could do that, he had no doubt he could take him out in one shot. One shot is all he would need. That was his promise. It's what he visualized every day. Every time he trained, it was all he could think about. The day he'd come across that swordsman. The day that without warning, he'd pull an arrow from his quiver, pull back on the bowstring, and take the shot. He visualized the arrow cutting through the air. He visualized the arrow soaring, piercing directly through the swordsman's skull. He visualized the day he'd look into the eyes of that dying swordsman. In fact, the only thing that bothered him was that he could probably only kill this man once. But for everything he'd taken away from him, he wanted him to suffer. Before long, they would make it to the city of Whale. As they had arrived, they would find that the city's gateway leading to the northern mountains had been cut off. The city was on a form of lockdown, primarily due to the monsters that were roving about in the monstrous side of the mountains. Frieren decided to take the time to be recluse. She was going to check out some spells shops and hopefully find some useful items, some chances to improve her skills. Of course, she hadn't lost sight of what she was aiming for, what she was trying to accomplish. But there was always that skewed form of time that always got the worst of her. It wasn't like an elf ever forgot, no. For a regular human, you could cross an elf when you were young, and you might think that you've gotten away with it. You could live your whole life, and the elf could never show up, and you would think you'd committed the ultimate caper. Only when you weren't realizing it in your ripe old age, when that elf showed up to your door with a murderous smile. You might have forgot, but the elf never did. The problem was that their concept of time was off by so much that for them, there was no inconvenience when it came to getting revenge. Sure, for you, it could have been 50, 60, 70. It might have even been 80 years. You might have forgot the reason that you pissed the elf off in the first place. But the elf never forgot. They never forgot your face. They never forgot the disrespect or what you did to wrong them. It was just that revenge came on their time and not yours. For Frieren, she was almost in that similar mindset. She was making a game plan, thinking about what she'd do to that monster that killed her boy. She'd think about every spell that she could use to torture him, every way that she could use to disintegrate and rip him limb from limb. Every dark and arcane act that she could commence on that heartless bastard, she'd gladly do it. But she had to stay focused. Now wasn't the time for getting distracted so easily. However, as fate would have it, Frieren had friends in high places. The Castellan of the city of Wall recognized her, and he recognized her as a famed hero. As such, he believed that if anyone was capable of clearing out the monsters to the north, then Miss Frieren and her party would be more than capable. As such, they were given passage into the mountainous side, the people of the city even giving them a celebrated farewell. For Frieren, it reminded her of when she left on their first adventure with Himmel, Hyeder, and Eisen. Now she found herself in a similar situation once again, a party of 4 setting off into the dangerous world. She stared at the young warriors that walked before her, Fern, Stark, and now Francis. Each one with their own story, their own dreams, their own destinies, all now tied and enrolled into one. Just like before, she was the oldest of the group, although the last time she went on an adventure, you wouldn't have been able to tell, given how she acted. But things were different. Things were so different, and now so much clearer. She knew without a shadow of a doubt the lives of these 3 young individuals. They were in her hands. She made a promise to herself. She wasn't going to allow anything bad to happen to any of them. For all of her years of living, she saw just what the future could hold. The value of life, how precious it is, and how fleeting it can be. Many lives and dreams, they get cut down in a moment. So often we think that we have so much time in this world. We think ourselves immortal, only to realize that the time can often be reduced. Many don't get to live into the age of adolescence. Many don't get to live to be young adults. Many don't make it to their prime years. Many don't make it to their years of a midlife crisis. Many don't make it to the ripe old ages. Many don't get to see the family that could come before them. Many die with dreams and ambitions unfulfilled. Many live long enough to regret the decisions that they made. For Frieren, she'd repeated this cycle over and over and over again. She'd lived many lifetimes compared to many that only lived a tenth of hers. But even so, for this time, she felt like she was fighting for something more than herself. More than just her own dreams and ambitions. The ambitions of those who had a bright future ahead of them. It was her job to protect those futures. A job she would uphold till the very end, by any means necessary. This concludes Frieren, the Elf and the Archer. What if Frieren trained Hawkeye? Season 1, Part 2. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned tomorrow as we're going to be continuing with What If Frieren Trained Hawkeye, Frieren, the Elf and the Archer, Season 1, Part 3. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.